Welcome to Dedicated Devoted. I'm Jared Columbell, your host.
And I'm Cora Columbell, your co-host.
On today's episode, I want to talk about unraveling the political events that have occurred within the last few days. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into essentially what's happening in our culture right now. Specifically, we know that Charlie Kirk has passed, and it was a very abrupt thing that had occurred in our society. And I think we're starting to see essentially a lot of things unraveling, or put in a different way, we're seeing, I guess you could say, some truth and untruth coming to the surface.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So today, Cora, the episode isn't heartfelt and warm and uplifting. It's more about unpacking some of the things that I guess I'm feeling and thinking, some of the things that you're thinking and feeling. And I think it's a good time to talk about it. Mm-hmm. I want to start off by just reading real quick what Wikipedia has to say. And by the way, Wikipedia is just one of the most untrustworthy sources of any sort of information. If you've attended college or you're at any collegiate level, never get a source from Wikipedia. Probably some errors built into it, but why don't I go ahead and just tee us off here real quick, and I'll read off what Wikipedia has. So it states, this is titled Killing of Charlie Kirk. And again, this episode isn't meant to be disparaging, or I guess you could say too heavy, right? That this podcast is designed to help us live a dedicated, devoted life, and also to sharpen other people's walk and help them live a dedicated, devoted life. And so I have some mixed feelings on talking about stuff like this, and that's one of the things we're going to dive into. So I'll just briefly go over this Wikipedia article here. And it says regarding the killing of Charlie Kirk, on September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk, an American right-wing political activist, was fatally shot while addressing an audience, or a member of the audience, on the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah, United States. The outdoor event was the first stop of the season for his American Comeback Tour, a speaking and debate series organized by Turning Point USA, a conservative organization he co-founded. Did you catch anything there in that first sentence?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to repeat it real quick.
Repeat it.
And what I'll do is I'll stop just at the comma.
Okay.
On September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk, an American right-wing political activist, was fatally shot while addressing an audience on the campus of Utah Valley University. I went a little bit past that comma.
Okay.
I'm going to highlight the thing that they didn't specify, right? The reason why this is actually more heavy, I think, for you and I is, as Bible-believing, Bible-professing Christians, those who are followers of Jesus, we probably associate Charlie Kirk more with being a conservative Christian.
Yeah, totally.
That would be fair to say, right? Mm-hmm. Listen to the description that they use: an American right-wing political activist.
Yeah.
So what was he advocating for? What was he an activist for? I think it was much more than just politics.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that most of his stuff was politics. Like, I know that people probably want to say it was political, but I think most of his stuff was just more biblical than political. And I know that can still be part of, political stuff could be some biblical stuff as well.
Yeah, in my opinion, those go hand in hand, right? From a biblical perspective, we know the government is instituted in order for us to have structure and order, and politics. We ought to be very deeply involved in politics.
Yeah.
And so when it says that he's an American right-wing political activist, I think that this is why I say be very weary of the sources that you actually utilize. He was much more than just a political activist. I think what he was a man that was deeply entrenched in conservative Christian ideology, and he lived out those ideologies, and that should bleed into every sphere that a Christian exists in. It should be in work, it should be in schools, it should be in education, it should be in the political realm, right? We got a friend that is a senator, and he's and one of the greatest things about having Bible-believing, Bible-professing Christians is in politics is that we think they're going to bring in a little morality.
Yeah, for sure.
More morality than maybe a non-believer would. Not to say that that's always true. So I want to kick off with this. With these events happening roughly 5 days ago, I think that there's kind of a somberness to, I guess, our culture and even extending all around the world. Why is it that one man's death, whom we probably weren't great followers of Charlie Kirk, right? We knew of some of his stuff. Why is it that somebody's death can have this sort of a ripple effect across the world?
I think for myself, it almost feels like, because you can kind of put yourself into his position. Like if you were sitting there sharing the gospel, like it could have happened to you. And I know some people wouldn't think he was sitting there sharing the gospel, but I think that was a lot of what he did was obviously shared his beliefs to everyone. And I think just a lot of people think like kind of that we don't live up to the expectations that we're supposed to. But if we did, would we face stuff that harsh as he did? The criticism, the hate, all the negative, everything that he's ever received if we did what we were supposed to do as Christians.
Yeah, for me, I guess it is one of those things where it's very tough sticking up for the truth. Mm-hmm. At times I've said, oh, yeah, this is something that I'm totally capable of. I can do it. God puts me in a very specific predicament and I do what I'm supposed to. And, it can be very hard to carry the weight of sharing the truth in a world that is just inundated with falsehood.
Oh, yeah, totally.
For me, I think, and I agree with you, right? You expect somebody who is, we call it the public town square, the opportunity to engage in debate, the old idea of exchanging thought and having an intellectual contender across from you and being able to grapple with the subject, whether you're able to win that person over into your argument or not. I think the idea that we saw there was sort of the silencing of the ability to have these public square debates, the ability to have open air conversations with people who disagree with you. It's almost, it's not symbolic. It's actually, it's not symbolic. It's not rhetorical. What we're talking about is an actuality that we got to see live.
Well, and I think that that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. I know for myself, I hate conflict with people. So even if it's, positive or if it's your side versus my side, to me, that makes my heart rate go up if I have to have any kind of disagreement with anybody. It could be about anything too. It doesn't even have to be about Christianity. It could be about a parking spot, But if I thought that was mine and they thought it was theirs, it's like that whole like anxiety of having to confront someone or say something. Do you just say something or do you just leave it as it is? I think that's what kind of gets a little bit hard, is just being able to. I think about he did that daily. He did that often, And for me, if I had to do that as much as he did, I just think that my anxiety would be through the roof,
Yeah. I personally have some feelings on whether or not that would be something that I would want to do. And I would say it's absolutely something that I would want to do.
Yeah.
I feel like this podcast is kind of the attempt for you and I to help others sharpen their walk, but it's also designed for you and I to be able to sharpen ourselves. And I think more than anything, we do need to contend in the public square. We do need to speak up for truth. We do need to advocate for that which is right. We do need to be able to proclaim the good news of Jesus. And there's something that is admirable about that. We know that when we do those things, those are very pleasing to God. I would say, though, because you mentioned you get, I guess you'd call it flustered, or you have anxiety around confrontation. But I think it'd be very fair to say that you and I don't like to see people get picked on.
No, absolutely not.
We don't, more than anything, we don't like injustice.
Yeah, and that's part of the personality, I think.
Yeah.
It's just I absolutely, I mean, I'm sure my parents could even attest to that. Since I was a kid, it was, if someone was doing the wrong thing, I always wanted to make sure that, I took care of it to make sure the right thing happened.
I was very much the same. Got bullied a lot, but I was a scrapper.
Yeah.
And so even though I got bullied a lot, and most of the time I wasn't up to any good anyhow, I would still stick up for other people because I just hated the feeling of being, I don't want to say taken advantage of, but people pinning me into, maybe that's not the best description. People treated me differently in a way that I felt like was unjust.
And do you think you're still like that, or does that seem like that was more when you were a kid? Would you say it's changed?
Absolutely not. I still get very contentious when it comes to the things that I believe in. Some people say that I'm passionate about certain things.
Yeah.
I would say that when I feel like I'm vying for something that is very important, and this is really where I think my spirituality and my gifts shine. I I get so bought in to what I am trying to do and share. And I think that that's kind of like when you see the death of a person like Charlie Kirk, you probably take some of the best attributes, and I'm not saying mine are comparable, but you take some of those attributes and you compare yourself and you feel a little bit of death in that.
Yeah.
That's how it felt for me. I'm going, this isn't somebody that I looked up to, it's somebody that I admired because I appreciated his
Yeah.
ability to articulate the truth and to contend in the public square and to be able to take knowledge and disseminate it in a very important way. But for me, what I saw was more of the silencing of the ability to share what's truthful in a world that is just so dark.
Yeah.
And so your comment with not wanting to have those contentious conversations or interactions, I think are overcome by our unwillingness to allow things unjust to occur.
Well, yeah, and I think that, as humans, we don't want to be in any kind of uncomfortable situation. We try to avoid being uncomfortable in any way that we can, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're designed that way.
Yeah. We'd rather just like avoid anything if it's going to bring us discomfort. We want to be nice and comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting here in the blanket right now. I'm pretty comfortable right now.
Well, comfort is one thing.
Yeah.
And it's not bad to be uncomfortable, but it is a bad thing to be too comfortable and not willing to go out and do the things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know what comes to my mind is the rich young ruler who came to Jesus and said that he wanted to follow him. And Jesus said, absolutely, very easy. What you need to do is sell all that you have and follow me.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult because we're creatures of comfort and we don't want to sacrifice the things that bring us pleasure.
Yeah.
But I tell you, there's something about this aspect of a lack of justice, right? The unjustness of taking somebody's life who advocates for the truth, I think is what bothers me the most. That's kind of what I saw, I guess you could say, in this assassination, is somebody being silenced for doing the right thing, and this is what it's like to live in the world in which we live in. But more than anything, I think what it does is it resurrects in all of us a little piece of we ought to do better.
Oh,
we
totally.
need to do better.
I was thinking there was something I was thinking about with that. Kind of like you're lacking, I mean, you get to, I think with all this, it made me just feel like how much I need to make up for things, how much I know there's a word for it, I just can't think of it. Where
I think of inefficiencies.
Yeah, just like you can see it in yourself. Like what you're capable of. So seeing something like this, I think it just brought to me like all the inefficiencies that that are in me that I know that I could do more, and I think there was times where we did do more, it's just different now.
Yeah, and I don't think what you're saying is that we need to pile on good works.
Yeah.
That's part of it. And I definitely feel the sense of urgency in that. We need to do good works and we need to be a greater part of our community. And we're obviously in a different state now, and we're trying to figure out how to get engaged with our local church, what ministries we can participate in. And I do feel a sense of that. I think that that's definitely part of it. The death of Charlie Kirk, in my opinion, when you think about like from an illustrative purpose, it shines a light, and this light illuminates different portions of our life. And within those different portions of our life, I'm starting to see some of the deficiencies, some of the things that I've been kind of lackadaisical about for some time.
Yeah.
Right? We've talked about it, and I go, man, I wish that I could go back in time and do better, right? I know that I've been called to proclaim the good news of Christ. I think that I've been given very specific spiritual gifts, and I haven't been exercising those. I've probably been living more in comfort and pleasure than I should be.
Well, and I think like kind of what I was saying earlier is like on why we're not is also like you said, like moving to somewhere new and just trying to get settled. it's almost been 6 months, but I feel like that's even been too long. Before we moved, we were definitely involved in a lot more things. And even one of my favorite things was working with the homeless. So again, I feel like until we get involved in those, which is going to be soon, because we've already talked to our local church that we're going to and all that to try to get involved. I think that's when we're going to feel more of a sense of purpose. I think we have it. It's just, and we know what it is we need to do. It's just getting plugged into the right church and the right people and just doing it.
Yeah, the beauty of the church is that we're on mission and that we're equipping one another and that we're doing it in a communal way. And I think that that's super important, getting plugged back into the church. And for any of the listeners out there, this is a great opportunity to share that you have to get engaged into ministry. Time is so short, and I think that that's one of the things that we came to recognize is we saw a young man whose life was taken very, very early on. I would have not fathomed in my life that this man would have died in the way that he died. It's tragic. That's what makes it even more upsetting, I think, right? It was public, and it was in a place where people got to see it, and we live in a digital age. Very, very tough.
Yeah, and I think for myself, like I've watched several of his videos, and I probably see him, on Facebook or Instagram probably daily or, a few times a week. I didn't even realize he was that young. I assumed just based on the way he carried himself that he was probably like early 40s. And so to hear that he was only 31 was definitely even more heartbreaking.
Yeah, he was definitely an accomplished man. And I heard his wife saying in a video that one of the words that he really utilized a lot was earn. And so he was a man of earn what you have. And I think that really goes back to, it feels like such a loss when somebody is such a hard, strategic, and dedicated worker, and then stuff like this happens. But it doesn't just end there. We saw this, and it was a very public event. I mentioned how our digital age has been able to transmit that brutal killing, and these are the kind of things that our eyes don't really get to see, I suppose, but that was kind of on display for the world to see. But I think the reverberation that's coming from it is going to bring a lot of good, but it's also going to really bring out some skeletons from some folks' closets.
Yeah, I think it kind of already has, though. You've seen a lot of that online of people that you maybe thought they were nice people, but, really nasty. It's really surprising how nasty some people could be. And I mean, for myself, even, I think I told you that I had to block a few people. I didn't even bother deleting, but I was just like, I'm just going to block these people because I don't believe in what they stand in. And even though I've had them as friends for years or even family members, it's like I just don't want to associate with people like that.
Yeah, one of the things that I believe with that is it's such a gift when people really show their true colors.
Oh, yeah.
It's a gift because then you don't have to work around the deception and the deceitfulness of who is that person, right? I think that's probably one of the things that I enjoy the most about being in the church, right? As a Christian, I feel like being in the church, you really get to know people better than you would if you weren't a Christian. What I mean by that is we have a side to us that I think our sinful side, right? We have our sinful side that I think we rarely acknowledge the depth of our depravity. But that's the whole point of the church is we come together and we worship God for who he is. We work on ourselves and we go through this process of sanctification and elimination of sin. Not that we're ever going to achieve that, but we try that. It's part of what God expects of us. We're working to prepare ourselves for eternity. And I think part of being in the church is that I come to appreciate is that realism. People, at least in churches that are real.
Yeah.
I've been in some churches that just aren't real. Do you know what I mean about that?
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important for folks to show their true colors, but at least in the church, we have that sort of as this commonality.
Yeah. Well, and I've had like friends personally say things like it's different if you kind of know what they believe or you don't know what they believe. Sometimes you assume that you know what someone believes just based on their character and all that. And I've still been friends with a lot of people who didn't believe the way that I believe. I actually have a lot of friends that don't believe how I believe at all. But I think it's when people start to get nasty is when I kind of change, maybe my mind and view on what kind of friend I want to be to them. And, I have an example that I guess I want to share. And it was a group that I would get together with often. And I loved it. Like, we would get together and we would work on stuff. And one day, one of the ladies, which I knew, if you see stuff around her house, it's like skeletons and death everywhere, So I know that's more of her style. And I know she's not a Christian and she doesn't believe in God and all that stuff. But according to her, and one day she just got really nasty and just started speaking really bad about God and how the devil was better looking than him. And he's just jealous because of all that. And it kind of got really disgusting at the table together. And there's only about 4 or 5 of us there. And I got that feeling again, that anxiety. But I got up and I told her, I said, I'm not going to be a part of this. And I think that was probably the biggest time that I could say that I've had to stand up for something like that. Because most of the time, I feel like most people I hang out with are somewhat believers. So I don't really deal with that conflict from most people. But when she did that, it just, again, made me stand up for my faith. And that was my last day there. I didn't join the group again. But the nice thing I have to say about myself in that situation, and I'm not saying that I'm always like this or I'm perfect in this, was I still am friends with her. I reached out and at this time, this was some time ago, I gave her stuff from my garden, and I treated her still nicely. But she knew why I left, and I told her why. It was no mistake, but I felt like it was more important to still show her the love of God that I had in me by still being friendly to her, still doing nice things for her. But yeah, I wasn't going to sit at the same table again.
Well, you mentioned, and that was a really great story that you share. I think that God puts us into very specific situations, and we're supposed to come in contact with folks who aren't saved. We're supposed to be able to share the truth with the world, and this is a podcast episode around sharing the truth and the consequences of that, and who we associate with, and what do we do when we put the spotlight on our own lives and we find the deficiencies and inefficiencies. And I think that that's what this podcast is really about. And so it makes me think we have all these great opportunities to be able to interact with the world, and we ought to do it in gentleness and respect. Coming out of 1 Peter, we need to do it in gentleness and respect. But there's also a time and a place where you got to cut those relationships.
Yeah.
And I think you can probably say amen to that one, because I've been one of those that I've shared with you numerous times. Hey, when you're building a friendship bridge, make sure the other person is actively building it with you.
Yeah.
If you're building a bridge single-handedly and they're just crossing it and you're doing all the work, that's not actually a friendship. It's a one-sided friendship, which is just you. And oftentimes we think that having this close contact with people who don't believe like us or non-believers is sort of this requirement of being a Christian. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
This idea of us reverberating the same thing in our own echo chamber, what that really means is we hang out with people who believe like we believe, therefore it reinforces our belief. I actually think that's a super healthy thing, especially if what you believe you feel like is the ultimate truth. I say you got to continue to do that. It's a very healthy thing to not expose yourself to unhealthy people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
We've all had the unhealthy person that we've associated with. And most of us, it's our family. I love my family. I love your family. We're not talking about anybody in particular. But a lot of times, that is very unhealthy. And you got to know when you disassociate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've learned that more recently because, just as time has gone on with, family, your family's your family, no matter what. But there's so many things that your friends would never even do that your family has done that I have just come to the realization that I have to cut ties with those people. Like, even if they're doing better now for my sanity and for my life and my family, I have to cut ties with those people.
Yeah, I think that that's a healthy thing. And I'm very appreciative that God is showing us the people out there right now who, one, don't disagree with us, but two, actually, they are disgusted by us and they are very clearly enemies of the church, enemies of God, therefore not enemies with us. This verse comes to mind, and I want to share this very quickly. It's going to be James 4:4-8. I'll actually just read probably the first few of them, but it starts off with, "You adulterous people, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God." That's a really great verse because I think that it really is demonstrating that our allegiance to the world demonstrates which camp we truly belong in. And that's what I mean by this light is illuminating a lot of different things. There are a lot of people who I think we've associated with for some time, and we say, as a Christian, I need to love, and I'm going to continue that friendship so that I can share. And I think there's a fine balance of allowing those people to exist in their own camp. That's the camp of the world. And then you got the alternative camp, which is the kingdom of God. And the kingdom of God is those who God has called. We heard this on Sunday, and I think it was a really great point. On Sunday, we heard about how God has his own, and his sheep know him. Do you recall?
Oh, yeah.
The sheep know him.
Yeah.
So when we belong in the camp of God, we know, and we ought to not associate very deeply in other camps. And some people might say, well, Jared, you're just saying that you're not willing to have an evangelistic heart and go and share the gospel. That's not true. The truth is we have to have a healthy relationship when it comes to how much time we spend with people who don't believe like us and who ultimately disagree with us. And our job is to share the truth in gentleness and respect, but it doesn't mean that we stay in those camps. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, yeah. It totally makes sense.
So for me and the death of Charlie Kirk, it does bring up some inefficiencies in my life, things that I think I can do better. One of them is I can definitely get more involved in ministry. So some of the things that I'm thinking about doing is finishing up my degree. That's one of them. I'm not saying that that's an ultimate thing that I need to wrap up, but my master's in apologetics, at least get that under wrap. There's the opportunity to participate more in church events. I'm going to share one that I think was super, super important, and I've been really, really terrible in this one. So one of the pastors from our church, I got to meet with him to get just to get to know him a little bit more, get to know a little bit more about the church. And one of the things that I just appreciated so much that I haven't seen enough, especially by myself and the church and those who I associate with in the church, is we went out and we were having lunch, and he stopped the waitress and asked, "What is your name?" And so she gave us her name, and he said, "We're about to partake of a meal. Is there anything that I can pray for you for?" That's a really important thing. I think we forgot of the power of prayer, but also we kind of lack that compassionate heart to be able to just stop a person and say, how can I pray for you today so that your day is impactful and meaningful?
Well, I think because a lot of times you and I both think that, when you see people every day, you don't assume that they're broken, right? Or they're dealing with something. Like, you figure they're there, everything's great. So I remember when we, did the homeless ministry, it was very easy to ask somebody, how can I pray for you? So easy, because you already knew broken, and broken as a person, they're suffering from something. I think we don't think of people who are just living their lives every day as like a broken person, but I believe that we are all in some way dealing with something. And we've seen that from like tons of videos now that usually if they ask someone, what's going on in your life? There's always something really hard that they're dealing with. We just don't think of it.
Everybody is going through something.
Yeah. And I think again, it's just, I think it, but you kind of forget. So with him doing that, again, it brought up to you again, thinking about asking people, how can I pray for you? Because that's a simple thing. Some people just might say no. We asked a lady the other day, how can we pray for you? And I thought she was going to say no, because at first it seemed like she was kind of like, or is there anything she actually did at first when you said, how can I pray for you? And she's like, no, I don't got nothing, And then all of a sudden she said, oh, well, actually you can pray for my kids. And then she started giving us names. So there was something to pray for, but I think since then I've spoken to her a few times, and I know that there's more things to pray for, and I've been praying for her kids, and it's nice to be reminded. That's exactly what we're dealing with the Charlie Kirk thing. Is it's just reminding us of who we need to be. Not saying we need to be like him. I mean, like just like him, or put him on any kind of pedestal. But at the same time, it just is a reminder as Christians who we need to be and how much we've been lacking in that department.
Yeah, no, those are great thoughts, and I agree with you. I think Charlie was pointing back to Jesus, and people need to be very careful in this, because I think that there's a lot of folks who are really are really big admirers of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, a lot of what he was pointing to was who Jesus is and what Jesus did. And I think that that's definitely something to kind of keep at the forefront of our minds. Is we're ultimately here for a very short period of time. And what we do with our time is going to make all the difference in the world. Whether you have 31 years like Charlie Kirk, or you're 100 years and your heart is still beating, what you do with your time needs to be just so meaningful. And we talked about this a little bit this week, where I said, my calling isn't my job.
Yeah.
I got a job, and that job's just going to be a job. And I would like it to be the most exciting job that I could have, or fruitful job that I could have. But at the end of the day, that's my job. My calling is something very different and very specific.
Well, and I think when it comes to, like, you're saying calling, but we were talking about like spiritual gifts too, same thing. I think that our spiritual gifts are very similar, but in two kind of different ways. What would you say is your spiritual gift? For people that obviously don't know you, I know it, but
I think it goes back to, so I don't want to say that I like apologetics, but apologetics isn't a spiritual gift.
Yeah.
One of my spiritual gifts is the gift of administration. I'm pretty good at doing pretty much anything administration. Teaching and preaching, I'm fairly decent at. I would say if there's something that I'm really good at that kind of pairs up with that, it's being willing to have contentious conversations.
Yeah.
And to be able to pull together a lot of big data sets, and then kind of sift through them, analyze them, and then dispense them.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much what an evangelist or an apologist does. Is they take a swath of information from the Bible and they condense it down into a meaningful way, and they're able to articulate that or share it back. And so I would say that's one of my gifts that I'm super passionate about.
Yeah.
But I'm probably kind of in the wading waters right now, where I don't feel like I'm kind of like doing the best at that in my life. I'm doing good at work.
Yeah.
I've been working a lot, right?
Yeah.
And that's been like the biggest thing in my life right now. And now a man who I didn't personally know dies, and all of a sudden the things that are really meaningful to me are starting to be re-illuminated.
Yeah.
And how about you? What about your spiritual gifts?
So I think like ours is, again, communication, and I say communication, not necessarily always with each other or the best communication, but I feel like I like to be able to talk with people. I like to have conversations with people. I think you like the tougher stuff. You like to get into more of the deep conversations. I just like to get to know people. I do want to know what people are feeling. I feel like myself, I can feel a lot of what other people are feeling. And sometimes that's hard on me, because if someone's feeling sad, I start feeling sad, or if someone's, it's usually for me, it's probably sad. I think I just feel if someone's in some kind of pain, I can normally feel that. And it makes it easy for me to talk to people. So I have to say my spiritual gift is being able to talk to people, and maybe some people don't see that as a spiritual gift, as just talking, but I think it's hard for a lot of people to approach people. But if I really want, I can talk to anybody. I'll just talk to anyone that I want to, again, I try to hold myself back, especially being in a new state. But if there's someone who I want to talk to, I just do it, and I think that is hard for a lot of people, but for me, it's not hard to talk to people.
Yeah, no, the desire to talk is something, in my opinion, that is very powerful for God's kingdom, because most people don't want to talk. Yeah. That's actually what I admire about Charlie Kirk the most. I thought he was a fairly articulate individual.
Oh, very.
And so I've come to really appreciate him for his knowledge and his ability to dispense that knowledge. But more than anything, you have to have a heart to be able to approach people and to have these conversations, right? Because oftentimes what they are is for folks who have been in this realm for some time, they're just conflicts of spiritual battle, and they're just never ending. And those things are just so tiring. And so I admire the guy for being able to share some of his wisdom, but also to be able to articulate for the faith. That's a really awesome thing.
Yeah, and I do truly believe that was a spiritual gift because now, a lot of videos have surfaced of when he was like 18 and just getting started, and he sounded like he did today. I couldn't believe that he was even an 18-year-old because just the way that he was able to articulate things and put things together was just amazing.
Yeah. His death reminded me that sometimes God loves his people so much that he takes them.
Yeah.
And that's just how life is. It happens. And, we're all made to die. Unfortunately, they can happen in different ways. And so it's very tragic what we had seen there. But I think it's really shaking up our lives a little bit. You mentioned the gift of communication. And one of the things that I really think is I've been in a lot of scenarios with just introverts, lots of introverts.
Yeah. And
being that person that has the ability to break up the conversation because you're willing to talk and willing to engage. And I'm not saying that all introverts are dysfunctional. What I'm saying is there's some people who are thinking and processing, and there's others who are connecting. And that's one of the things that I know that you and I do quite often is we communicate very well, but we're natural connectors.
Yeah.
We funnel people through us.
Yeah.
That's a great thing for two people who are trying to be able to do something for the kingdom of God.
Yeah. Well, I just took a pottery class, and there was only about like 10 of us there. And the lady kept saying, like, anyone want to come and help me demonstrate this? Or would anyone like to come up? And I waited for like 2 seconds, and then I was like, I'll do it. And my daughters just laughed at me that every time she asked if anyone would help, it was me, because no one else was going to do it. Everyone else is kind of more shy or didn't know. But I was like, I don't want this lady to have to wait. Like, so I was like, me, and I just went up there every time and was able to help her with, whatever she needed. But then whenever other people needed help, they're asking me. And I'm like, I just learned 5 minutes ago with you. I don't know what I'm doing. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. You're a person, like I said, who you connect.
Yeah.
You connect people to people to you, and then to other people. I'm very similar, but you have more of the compassionate approach.
Yeah.
Mine is more of the utilitarian approach. Your dad and I are very similar, and I never noticed it, but a few years ago I realized we both have big hearts, but we seem very cold. and we're not, right? We both have very big hearts. We're both very sensitive, but nobody would know it. They're just like,
oh, yeah,
those guys are so rough around the edges.
Yeah, I think you're probably more sensitive than I am, but
I'm very sensitive.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what makes me uniquely different.
Yeah.
I'm always like with my employees, they might just see me. It's very hard for me. I guess it's not hard for me to express how I feel, but most of the time when I'm doing stuff, I'm trying to figure out how can I impact people? Like at work, I'm always trying to figure out how can I help people do their job better? How can I help them be more successful? How can I put more money into their pocket? But most people will go, Jared's just trying to drive the bottom line results. But that's not what's in my brain.
Yeah.
In my heart, there's this thing that just is, I guess my heart is a little soft. And there's this thing that's always like, how can I help somebody? But it almost comes off as task oriented. It's just like a big task list that I have.
Well, because you're not dealing with friends, you're dealing with employees. So
well, even with friends,
yeah,
like I have some friends that I've led a handful of friends to the Lord, right? And you can imagine in my imaginary checklist, leading those friends to the Lord was on my checklist.
Yeah,
and so that is a task-based endeavor, but it means that I'm very goal oriented. And so therefore it can come off as not being like the most warm and sensitive approach. You kind of have the sensitive side to it. I have more of the aggressive side to it, but I think it's a nice marriage with the skill sets that we have. Like with the homeless, I think that you have the ability to really connect with people and make them feel comfortable and safe. And I have the ability to communicate to them to let them know, well, there's things that are fine and not fine.
Yeah.
And it's like a fine balance of delicate and strong. And so I think that those are very important things when it comes to some of our gifts. Now, you and I think we have a lot of gifts. I'm going to tee it back to you because I think there's something else you're forgetting. What other spiritual gifts do you have?
I don't know. I don't know.
You got to think of this one.
Other spiritual gifts.
It's one of your primary ones.
Are you not talking about music, are you?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
You're musically inclined. There's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
The gift of worship is a very important one.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm mentioning this is we should just use this opportunity for this episode of the podcast to talk about how did the death of Charlie Kirk reverberate into our lives, even though we didn't know the man.
Yeah.
Because it's going to illuminate things that I think you and I can start looking at and go, I think we could do a little bit better there. And I do believe that you're a talented musician, and I think you play piano excellently. That was a hard one. Mm-hmm. But I think that's something that you ought to use.
Yeah.
Your voice and your talents are just great.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like you were talking about not using things right. Well, not really not using things, but I feel like for me, when it comes to music, it's something that I've kind of not used in a long time. I have a keyboard downstairs, and even singing, I don't do that as much. And in some ways, some places I felt like it's not necessary. I'm like, there's plenty of people who are doing it really good, so I can just kind of, be comfortable, right? And then, at our current church too, I think as far as that goes, I think they do a really good job. I wouldn't mind joining that and joining some of those ministries. I actually really knowing music, you can tell when people practice and when they don't. And I have to say that where we're going now, they definitely practice, and it sounds great. So I wouldn't mind joining something like that. I just want to feel like I'm doing something meaningful. And again, I just haven't been as passionate about music as I have in the past. I definitely used to have way more passion. And I remember even as a teenager, my dad would have to come into my room. I'm glad we didn't have electronics then, but my dad would come into my room in the middle of the night and be like, hey, you got to stop. Like, it's 12 o'clock at night, you got to stop playing piano. And he put me on the other side of the house. I was so far from their room, but my dad would have to tell me that often, like, hey, it's time to go to bed, So yeah, that definitely was more of a passion. I have to say, in my teens and in my 20s, my 30s, not as much, but I think I could fall in love with it again,
Does it sadden you that you haven't pursued it like you used to?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, because I feel like there's just been so many things that I've been dealing with lately that have kind of kept me away from doing music, or even I still love music. It's one of my favorite things to listen to. I mean, not listen to, but I mean, you could watch TV and you could do all this, but I love music, and I love just how people come up with lyrics and all that. And that's one thing that I've wanted to do for so long, but it's just a matter of like sitting down and doing it. And I haven't made that time to do any of that with all the other things that I've been doing, But I feel like now that we've been in South Dakota for almost 6 months, things have settled. We've obviously settled into a pretty nice place. And the house is pretty much all put together for the most part. And there's really no excuses to practice more and do more things that I am passionate about, or used to be passionate about, but maybe not as much anymore.
Well, there's such a beautiful opportunity at this point in our lives to pause and reflect on the passions that we used to have and to reignite those. I think that that's part of what I'm awakening to. And one of the things that I really think is the world needs a deeper heart of worship. And if you have the ability to be part of that process of worship, at least with music, that's something that's really great to participate in. I know for me, where I've been my happiest is when I'm teaching or preaching. And there's been a lot of things that have kind of led me here and there, and I never ended up where I thought I would be. I think at a certain point, it's always very easy for a career to overtake what your true calling is. And so I would love to be able to, one, get back to this podcast on a regular cadence, even if it's only, one episode a week. I think that would be phenomenal, especially if you and I are saying, hey, communication is one of the things that we both have a commonality with and we're great at. So I would like to be able to commit to that and try to get back to it. I really do think that God has called me to preach, and that's a very important one. And I do see it more as contending with the culture. It's very similar to, I think, what Charlie Kirk did and many others, where you're presenting a holistic picture of what it means to be a Christian, and that's politics, religion, life, family unit. There's a lot of things there that I think the world truly needs. And I hope through the death of Charlie Kirk that there's this multiplicative effect. We talked about the multiplicative effect on a previous episode, but I hope that there's this multiplicative effect that reverberates across the world where people really start to recognize and illuminate areas in their life where they can just do so much better. And ultimately that better leads people into the kingdom of God. They come to know Jesus as Savior. That's something that's super unpopular right now. I think even as Christians, we become a little lackadaisical regarding that. We need to share it more. We need to share it often, and we need to share it consistently. As Christians, if you're listening right now, it's very important that you get active and engaged with your kids. It's just way too easy for your kids to just be brought to church once or twice a week. You do the program, and then you say that you're good. There's many of our children who do not know the truth, and we need to be able to peer into their lives and really show them the love of God. So I think that there's a lot of great things and new things that I would like to commit to. Sounds like new things that you would like to commit to as well. And so I'd love to be able to explore some of those on the next episode.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you for joining us today on Dedicated Devoted. We aim to help others live a dedicated, devoted life. On today's episode, we touched on a very heavy topic, and I want to end on this note. Charlie Kirk was a great man who had communicated the good news of Jesus to a lost and dying world. And I think that we need to do that more and more. And hopefully his legacy and what he stood for reverberates into our culture so that we can be the change. I'm sure that Charlie is in the presence of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And hopefully today's episode was a nice opportunity to be able to illuminate a little bit of his life. Join us on the next episode.